Well, good morning, everyone. It is Thursday, May 21st at 8:04 a.m. And I would like to call this meeting of the SLDC Board of Directors to order. May we get a roll call of attendees, please, and thank you.
Sure. Director Arnold,
Present.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
Here.
Director Gilbert,
Here.
Director Koenig,
Present.
Director McBride,
Present.
Alderwoman Sonia,
Present.
Director Spencer,
Present.
Director Young, and Chair Milberg.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Wonderful, thank you. On to agenda item number 2, approval of minutes for the April 16th, 2026 regular board meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Second.
Having heard a motion and a second, is there any discussion? All right, seeing no discussion, would you please call the roll?
Director Arnold,
Yes.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
Aye.
Director Gilbert,
Aye.
Director Koenig,
Aye.
Director McBride,
Aye.
Alderwoman Sonia,
Aye.
Director Spencer,
Aye.
and Chair Milberg.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, on to agenda item number 3, resolution number 26 SLDC 1080, authorizing execution of an amendment to professional services contract with Interborough Partners LLC for planning and design services related to the Project Connect Our Plan neighborhood planning initiative. Is there a motion, a second, to consider this item?
So moved. Second.
All right. With the motion second, we will turn it over to a presentation and discussion. I believe Stephanie is going to handle the conversation. Is that still correct?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me this morning. This is a request to approve a modification to a resolution that we presented back in March regarding the neighborhood planning efforts for the Project Connect neighborhood. Again, back in March, we provided a brief update on the status of the R plan process, which is creating implementable neighborhood plans to guide housing, economic development, land use, and investment in 6 neighborhoods: Jeff Vanderloo, Carr Square, Columbus Square, Hyde Park, St. Louis Place, and Old North St. Louis. This complex and cross-functional work has involved extensive engagement with neighborhoods and city stakeholders. We're updating existing conditions and market analyses, neighborhood plan developments, and creating zoning and redevelopment tools for this effort. We have undertaken all of this hoping to have wrapped it up in April of last year, but in prioritizing really hearing the voices of and different perspectives of all 6 neighborhoods, it's taken some additional time, but we are excited to keep moving this forward towards public review and planning commission adoption later this summer. Our consulting partner for the work is Interborough Partners, and our March resolution requested an extension of our consulting agreement with them through June, plus a small increase in the contract amount. Today, we are asking you to approve this resolution, which will do a few different things. First, it's going to supersede the March resolution. Second, we're going to extend time through July 2026 to perform. That's to allow time to accommodate this additional public review cycle. We're also asking to approve the full contract amount or contract amount extension by an additional $30,000. That does include the $12,500 that was referenced in the March resolution. And then finally, we wanted to make sure we correctly identified the source of funds that is expected to fund this effort. We have talked to our friends at LCRA, and there are funds available there to fund this extension. So subject to their approval later this month, we would have funding through that source. So we wanted the resolution to be correct in that regard. Again, in March, you heard from Curtis. He gave some details about the project, so there's not much to add since that great presentation, but I just wanted to share again that Curtis Griggs and Melissa Garcia have been carrying so much effort in this. They're putting a ton of time and energy and passion into the Project Connect effort. I'm just very excited to see it come to fruition later this year. So with that, I will stop and answer any additional questions, but I appreciate your consideration today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the overview, Stephanie. Do we have any questions from the group?
I guess I'll start. I know there's been some delays. Are there any consequences to them not meeting this extended deadline?
Yeah, so that's a good question. The main thing that we've been tracking has been eligibility for the CRA neighborhood planning grants, neighborhood plan implementation grants. And so they are being flexible with plans that are underway. That if you're in a plan area where planning is actively happening, you're still eligible to apply for that funding. So that's the main thing that we've been tracking in terms of consequences. But overall, it's 6 neighborhoods. We've got 60 plus active neighborhood committee representatives, and there are a lot of different voices, right? Even though it's 6 neighborhoods surrounding one facility, they are certainly not a monolith, and even within their neighborhoods, there are a lot of different perspectives to consider. So we're trying to be patient with all of that and continue to advocate for them every time there are funding opportunities available. So hopefully.
Stephanie, could you remind me on the initial source from the March resolution that we were going to use that funding, and now that it's switched to just general funding through LCRA?
Yeah, so it was misidentified as SLDC revenue in
Oh,
March.
okay.
Yeah. So these 2 extensions have always been intended to be from LCRA funds.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have one. It's the original proposal was for $12,500.
The initial extension in March, yes.
Okay. And that was March of this past year.
Yeah, the contract goes back to 2024 timeframe.
Okay.
So we've been working on it for quite a while, and 417,000 and change was funded through CDBG dollars.
Okay.
And so we have been able to use all of those funds really through the beginning of this year.
Okay.
So this is to finish it out. We've had some, special circumstances that, again, we want to make sure we take into account through all of this. And so that's what the additional funding request is for.
Okay. So the work to occur between now and July will be, I guess, pretty extensive then, right? I mean,
it's cleaning up, including comments from a couple of the neighborhoods that were very thorough in their review and had a lot of suggestions that they wanted to make around pictures that were included and the way, certain concepts were described. So this is just intended to capture a lot of those cleanup items. The 30,000 does reach back into the fall. So I think that's the other thing to keep in mind is that the consultant has been very generous with their time, kind of extending the work and continuing to keep this thing moving. So it's 30,000, but it reaches back several months.
okay. So the 30,000 is also including some back pay.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you all for your continued support of this effort. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for your work driving it forward, Stephanie. We appreciate that. And I know, quick comment, we are getting in our office a lot of positive feedback about the general approach that the city and SLDC are collaboratively taking on neighborhood planning efforts. It's something that there's a lot of positive conversation and appreciation around. It's pretty intensive work. So I just want to uplift our gratitude to all of you for continuing to drive that forward in such a positive manner. So thank you for that. Any other discussion, any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, maybe get a roll call.
Director Arnold,
Yes.
Alderwoman Clark-Hubbard,
Aye.
Director Gilbert, Director Koenig,
Aye.
Director McBride.
Aye.
Alderwoman Sonia,
Aye.
Director Spencer,
Aye.
Director Young,
Aye.
and Chair Milburn.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you very much. On to agenda item number 4, resolution number 26 SLDC 1081, authorizing and approving administrative agreements between St. Louis Development Corporation and the entities it supports. Is there a motion and a second?
So move. Second.
All right, seeing a motion and a second, looks like David Meyer, you are on deck.
Thank you. Good morning. As all of you are serving in your role as chairs of boards of the entity that SLDC supports, I don't know that this would be terribly much of a surprise. So as you all know, SLDC was created back in 1988, among many things, to support a number of publicly oriented boards and commissions. And that documentation of the relationship is what's before you today. These administrative agreements come before you in a 5-year cycle, which is coming up on July 1st. So we're presenting this resolution for your approval to enter into agreements with all of the different entities that SLDC supports, including but not limited to those that you all chair. So what we are seeking is your approval for these. I've attached a sample agreement. It's the one for LCRA. The others will be very similar. I would note that they're similar but not exactly identical. So if we're seeking your approval for the concept, not for the exact form of each agreement. And I should also add that I'm presenting this jointly with Charlie because there are a couple of agreements that have specific tailoring related to financial arrangements that he, if you ask, would be in better position to discuss than I would. But we're seeking your approval for this resolution so that we can enter into agreements with all of the boards and commissions, which you in turn will see when you chair your boards over the next couple of weeks. Happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you so much, David. All right, we'll open up for questions and comments from anyone.
This is for legal and admin support, or?
Correct. It's legal and it's again jointly presented by fiscal and legal, but it's for the support that SLDC as an overall body with all of its staff provides to each and every commission. So the agreement addresses primarily actually fiscal management, but also just the general support and day-to-day needs of each board.
All right, any other questions or comments for David? Seeing none, maybe get a roll call, please.
Director Arnold,
Yes.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
Aye.
Director Gilbert, Director Koenig,
Aye.
Director McBride,
Aye.
Alderwoman Sonier,
Aye.
Director Spencer,
Aye.
Director Young,
Aye.
and Chair Milburn.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you for that. On to agenda item number 5. This is resolution number 26-SLDC-1082, approving an annual administrative budget for fiscal year 27, covering the period July 1st, 2026 through June 30th, 2027. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
All right, having a motion and a second. Charlie, over to you for some discussion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This budget is presented to the board usually around this time of year, May, June, even into July, for the fiscal year, as you mentioned, July 1 through June 30th, 27. We've been on the same fiscal year as the city since, I think, 2000, around the year 2000. We used to be on a calendar year, but switched over to be more in line with the city budget process. The document, before I get into it, I'll give you a piece of history that I believe occurred. Not necessarily gospel, but I will give it to you. Every city has some sort of economic development agency. This is City of St. Louis's approach. But before SLDC was formed, going back maybe into the early 1950s or something, the state created legislation that authorizing cities to form development corporations which have certain powers associated with them. I think it's around the early 50s, maybe
Early 50s.
yeah. Anyway, the city of St. Louis did that. Actually, there's three organizations that start with L: Land Clearance, LRA, and LDC. LDC is not one of those state created organizations. It's a not-for-profit that was formed to just for small business loans, basically. Not to say that the other organizations couldn't do that, but this is specifically set up for that. But there was also IDA, Port Authority, things like that, that were offered to the cities if the cities took action to farm them. In the 1980s, there were 6 of those entities, all operating independently of each other. There was much discussion that there was some healthy and unhealthy rivalries between those entities. There was at that time in the late 80s, there was a lot of discussion about putting them under one roof. And even to the point of all those entities transferring their assets to SLDC, which would be the umbrella corporation for all of them. It was later decided that wasn't a very good solution, so all the entities existed with their assets and liabilities as they do today, with SLDC performing the administrative function for those development agencies. LCRA has no staff. Actually, LRA has no staff. We all know what it is, but all the staff works for SLDC and is part of this budget. David just mentioned that every 5 years, each entity under SLDC's roof, well, the asset entities all approve that this relationship continue. I think it's written flexible enough that it can stop at any time by either party, but in the absence of any no change, we do it every 5 years. The SLDC was formed in actually 1989, and almost immediately
December of 80.
Okay. Again, this is all unofficial. Almost immediately, CDA recognized that the work we do met the objectives of their funding program. They've been in existence. I'm not sure when CDA started, but they basically develop work programs to assist us in our funding. The city did not, even though farming us, they wanted us to rely on fees that we generated, land sales, and CDA, more of a city agency than we are. We are closely linked to the city, but we are not a city agency per se. And as you all know, we're closely tied to mayoral appointments for all the boards and stuff. So basically, we're the city development agency. That's enough of that, as my grandkids would say. This budget is, for the next fiscal year, same as the city. One of the entities, the Port Authority, actually submits its budget early. The port chair is here with us here today, but we approved the port budget back in a month or two ago. It went to the city to be part of the overall city budget, and that's in process right now. We had a team go over to the budget committee of the city maybe a week ago to present this document. Basically, it didn't change since then. Maybe a few T's and dots, but basically what was presented to the budget committee is this. The page one is just an overview and highlight, and I won't get into that. But it basically is a 10,000-foot summary of what is to follow. The next page to follow is the budget itself, which again is for the administrative portion of SLDC, which is SLDC's primary goal to provide funding for the other development agencies. And in the process, SLDC, which is a not-for-profit 501c3 organization, C4, I'm sorry. Caught David sleep.
Oh, no. No, it was SLDC was actually July of '88. Yeah, it's a 4.
Still 88, okay.
Come on.
And so we have at last count, I think we have 83 current staff. And then 4 vacancies are also in this budget. And it's not as you know, the ARPA program was taken on by SLDC. Not entirely. The city's ARPA award from federal government, I think was close to 500 million. SLDC received about 110 million of that award through contracts with the city. And those contracts were with this community development agency, and they are coming to a close, let's call it the end of December. I think the mayor said she wants everything done by September 30th, which is our goal. But the program does end according to federal law by December 31st. We did have a number of staff that were dedicated to ARPA that we funded for a half a year in this budget. We are trying to perpetuate the continuance of some programs. The Economic Empowerment Center, we'd like to see continued with a number of other things that we small loan programs and housing initiatives. We will, I'll let the director speak to that, but there are certain things that came out of this we'd like to see continued even though funding's run out. So I'm sure he will after he gets his feet wet a little bit here and make decisions on all that. The top part of this budget page is all revenue items. In the top, there's 3 main sections for revenue. The CDBG, we mentioned they have a number of work programs that help support us. general administrative work program, property maintenance program, capacity building program, and then they help fund the city councilor's office, which is our they represent us legally. David actually works for the city councilor's office, James Morrow, and their staff. Then there's the middle area SLDC agencies. We talked about that when we these 5-year agreements that you approved come with a price tag. They help fund the personnel at SLDC. The Port Authority we have down for $2 million for next year. LRA 300,000, PIE 75,000, IDA 450, LCRA 2,525,000, LDC 30, totaling 5,380,000. So a good percent, maybe 40% of the budget from the agencies and the revenue they generate. The Port Authorities approved their piece. When they approved their budget, they approved the SLDC piece within that budget. The other agencies are going to be, will request those, we'll present a budget and request that funding in the month of June. And like I said, each of those agencies has a way of generating money and helping to support SLDC. The other item is revenue that SLDC generates on its own. That's the 7,172,000. If you turn the page, that you'll see that 7,172,000, and its makeup, its composition. The largest part is the new market tax credit fees at SLDC, the program SLDC owns and operates. This is a federal incentive program that has been around since I think 2007. And we apply for allocations whenever allocations are asked for by the Treasury Department. But it's been an excellent program for the city and for SLDC. We've been very competitive. In fact, Bill Seddon would tell you we're the top governmental agency applying for the funds in the country. We've received allocations of hundreds of millions of dollars, and those are divvied out as the board chooses when we bring resolutions to the board. There's also a large item in there for ARPA funding for administration, 1.2 million. That's roughly half of what we spent in the last fiscal year, and that will complete the ARPA program. Under expense, and if anybody has any questions at the end, you can certainly ask them regarding any of this. Under expense, we have personnel the total revenue is 14 million, a little over 14 million, down from the 15.4 of the prior year. Personnel, we have at 9,663,000, and it's the top driving expense especially when you include legal support, which we have at 800,000. And back to personnel, SLDC's current kind of structure is a real estate department, a major projects department, a department that and under like major there's a TO behind here, but you can see the way we're divided up organizationally. And, we have, the, MWPE, enforcement, their, offices, housed under SLDC. So, that type of, those are the three main pillars. Incentives are under major projects, and real estate is, all of, LRA is under real estate, and LCRA. Two main, real estate holding entities that we have here. There is, the next item is and by the way, this is set up with the prior year budget on the left and the requested budget on the right. And then the column, the last column is the differential between the two. And we have established a certification office, and we have budgeted 300,000 as support for the certification office. It's currently housed in the Economic Empowerment Center. The workforce compliance is those are at 242. That's the software to actually make them function. It's specialized software when monitoring the workforce projects. The people that support that are in that 9.6. The business development is their friends in the St. Louis County that help us with small business loans and major development soon to occur, or they're trying to attract or keep folks from in place in the city. Then the other items are all small that support the personnel, or travel, office space, telephone supplies, equipment, etc. There's 200,000 contingency, expenses match the revenues, and the 30 million down below is just the ballpark of program expense that we think we will be doing during the next fiscal year. It involves a lot of the ARPA programs, it involves a lot of the new market programs, but it's just a ballpark. It could be plus or minus 10 million. We don't know at this point. I mentioned page 3 already. Page 4 hones down on the expense items. Page 5 hones down on the expense items. Page 6 is a breakdown of the consultant item, which should be 550 on the budget, which is the second last item. And how we get to 550, it's also down from the 643 from last year. The rest of it is organizational charts, and I'm going to put a period right there.
Thank you.
Thank you for that overview. We'll open it up for questions and discussion.
I think page 5 is mislabeled. It says 26 instead of 27, but I think it is 27 numbers.
Thank you very much. We'll make that correction.
Can you tell me more about the adjustment on the bottom of page 6 where it says included elsewhere in the budget?
Sure. The adjustment is 542,000. That's made up of consultants. So if you go back to the budget page, those items are included separately. Just, they could all be considered budgets. I could have made the budget, the consultant item $1 million, but I wanted to
Oh, I see.
show the function of them more than just plugging them in there. And that's just the 300 for the certify office and the 242 for the workforce.
Gotcha. Okay, those you called out specifically in the expenses.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. And I had one more question. How do we handle all the costs associated with the upgrade of the boardroom?
Yes, the upgrade of the boardroom is really a current expense.
Okay,
It's not in the next year's budget. We paid for that out of the ARPA interest account
okay,
because it was not in the budget.
okay.
Did approve it, yes.
Does it get capitalized or was it expense?
No, we'll expense it.
Okay,
It's any technology, we
It's-
just expense.
okay. Thank you.
Is it gonna be finished soon?
Yeah, I think so, although I'm not the one to answer that. Get to the boardroom about once every 6 months.
Well, Maisa and Stephanie are on that have been leading that work. I don't know if they have some insights on when we expect that to be completed. Relatively soon, I believe.
Yeah, I'm sure, Maisa, are you on the call?
Yes, I'm here.
You want to give any updates on how the boardroom improvements are going?
Yes, so the installments were complete last Friday. We had to make some additional installments for receptacles for the confident monitors. So those should be installed by next week. We have already started the training for staff as well as other departments within Suite 2000 to train on the technology side as well as the user side. And so that happened this week, and we will provide additional trainings hopefully in June. We do not want to open the boardroom until training is complete. And also, we are going to do mock trainings, or mock meetings in the month of June as well. So we'll do a few mock meetings on Teams, Google Meet, as well as Zoom, so that we are confident when we start our future meetings. But overall, everything is complete. Everything is installed in terms of the monitors, the AV system. We're just waiting on a third-party electric company to do the receptacles for the confident monitors, and then we'll be able to use the room.
And I'll just add, Mais has been doing an incredible job leading that effort and coordinating all of the pieces and making sure the training and the signage and all that is underway. So thank you for all of that, Maisa.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Charlie, for revenues, could you remind me what the RCC is associated with the demolition program?
The RCC is the Regional Crime Commission.
Okay.
They receive state funding and pass it through to us for demolition. It includes some administrative funds in there to farm that. And that's also, I think there are ARPA funds that'll be.
You're right.
Yeah.
And the drop in interest, that's just from the depletion of the ARPA funds?
Correct. Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to give credit to Chris McGuire, who we were like 50-50 on this thing, you know, so Chris is enjoying a day of golf. I think he's probably got his golf shoes on now, but thanks, Chris.
Before we wrap up, I've got a couple of questions, a couple of points on the revenue side. I've brought it up the last couple of years about the $1 million, the Singles Economic Development Partnership. This is just discretionary funding and it's not tied to CDA. It's money that can't be used basically for anything. We are under contract, but I would love to know what we're purchasing for $1 million. What are the outcomes? I don't think we have one presentation this past fiscal year on their work that was supposed to be directly related to our city. And it's just 8% of our budget. So it's something that we really need to pay more attention to, I think. On the development fee side, our pipeline is soft and the interest rates and the markets are part of that reason. But do we feel like the projections on the developer fees are related to the projects that we expect to see or that are in the pipeline already? Or are we expecting that to go up or go down? Then I've got a couple questions on the expense side.
Maybe that's a director question, but I'll try to answer something. Regarding the SLEDP, although it's not huge, it's significant. Part of their $1 million comes right back to us to help fund the certified program. So it's really the other comment I'll make about SLEDP is that's the same number we started at 11 or 12 years ago, and it has not budged, but I think they recognize they can do more.
Yeah, so I mean, not a whole lot to add there other than, it is something that has been brought to my attention by a number of stakeholders, and it's worth double clicking on, I think, to say the least. And we're considering maybe bringing the county in for the next board meeting to maybe provide a little bit of insight and a presentation on some of the work that we're doing together that might help support some of that expense. And I think, at a minimum, we get an update, but I think it's worthy of additional discussion and consideration with them in terms of what we're getting from the million and what the future may hold for that part of the relationship.
Thank you.
And I think
Just to follow up on that point, in the past, there have been commitments for that to be an ongoing quarterly presentation that then fallen off. And so I think we'd like to assure that presentations not just be annual, but to be at least quarterly for the same reasons that Director Spencer's identified, that we can track what the benefits are that we're obtaining from the SLDP monies.
Absolutely. Good question.
yeah, and I think with the legislation passed by the state recently, a couple days ago, as a matter of fact,
I was gonna ask about that.
we will see development downtown, hopefully grow. The mayor's also committed, Rams money. I don't know if that's official, but,
That has to be passed by the Board of Aldermen, the official.
won't even mention that. Anyway, we're always looking at the bright side of things here, so, we will, try to, our focus is to use our development incentives the way they were meant to be. Of course, we gotta jump hurdles to do that, but that's what we'll keep pushing to do. And I think from my perspective, what we haven't seen is a lot of the little 2 and 4 family houses that are needing abatement stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of my favorite topics. That $400,000 threshold is not high enough. Just a couple other things on the legal support went up 194,000. Is that for additional support or is it?
Yeah, and it is for additional support. Yeah.
And then there's an offset on the certification expansion because of the way that we're using consultants. So it kind
Correct,
of
that's
balances
correct,
out.
that's correct.
Thank you.
Blake, while you're asking about that, certification says includes our coverage of St. Louis County to county compensate us for that? Or do
Yes,
they? Okay.
The $1 million that we just talked about, they say, just give us, $850.
Okay, I see.
I think there is an agreement that supports that. It's not just like,
Okay.
but, yeah, that's worked out well, and there might be other areas. I think the EEC provides them also support. Maybe they would do the same thing for EEC. That we could probably approach them on some other things too, and maybe you whittle it down like that.
Thank you.
I think that was an important point on the developer fees with Modessa and the MIZ legislation getting passed last week. That is something that I didn't know if you considered that, but we should be seeing some increased activity based on.
Yeah, I'm happy to hop in and offer a few comments just on that, as well as the proposal for the Rams bill as it currently stands with the downtown buckets. Obviously, in the mayor's office, we were thrilled to see the innovation zone bill as well as the Modessa 2.0 bill get across the finish line, and really want to uplift the work of the SLDC team in providing some great targeted feedback and making sure that both of those pieces of legislation were as strong as possible. They were involved for months and working with the state partners, both the departmental level as well as the legislative level. We do believe that those are going to be very powerful economic development tools for our downtown. We're looking forward to taking advantage of them, and getting some more, development and, growth, economic growth and revenue in the pipeline as well. That'll hopefully spur some of, the additional activities and revenues for, permitting fees and other pieces as well, to the points that have been raised earlier. And then the current proposal in the Rams legislation that has been filed and introduced and will start to be heard in the coming weeks and discussed a little bit more is for a $55 million proposed investment in downtown to focus on revitalization of different corridors, whether specifically certain locations like the riverfront, broader area, or other corridors, recruitment of small businesses to help folks bridge the A to B to get more folks downtown to take a chance in downtown. Infrastructure, sports event recruitment and attraction. We know that we've seen a lot of revenue activity generated from the events that we've held downtown so far this year. So it's not a lot of new ideas, but they are ones that keep on coming up again and again and again and again in conversations with different stakeholders, with our development professionals. So there is a lot going on right now. And then, of course, on top of that, we have the entertainment district bill that passed last year that's really starting to get underway right now, too. So there is a coalescing of a lot of different activity that I think there's a lot of hope. And of course, implementing all those effectively still requires a lot of work and partnership. And we're committed to that. I know SLDC is committed to that as well. But I just want to offer a little bit of reason for optimism moving forward. If folks here were looking for that, and just express our gratitude for the team over at SLDC for being relentless partners and pushing those things forward to passage, to filing, as well as helping get ready for the implementation phase. And it's a pretty exciting time, and I think we're hopeful that even in a period of economic uncertainty, that the confluence of all that will be a bright spot for economic development and revenue generation across the board for the city.
Thanks, Casey. Just a few comments from me. Having this be my first sort of budget process and getting my arms around how this works. Kudos to Charlie and Chris. This is a very unique way to try to budget for revenue and expenses. There's a lot of partner dependent revenue requests that may or may not be fulfilled. There are partner dependent expenses that we carry. There are, in some cases, unfunded mandates that we carry and figure out ways to fund the compliance with that. And so I think that we have a lot of confidence in this budget. I think it's reflective of previous budgets. It's reflective of our current operational reality and performance. And so this is a strong presentation. I think moving forward, we have ample opportunity to continue to sort of monitor some of these partnerships and with the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership being a good example of one of those that do have material impacts on our budget. And I think, over time, we can continue to build even more certainty, in terms of the revenue sources that are coming in and some of the expense line items, maybe getting a better handle on what some of those are and why they are, and making sure that we're deriving the most value from some of these significant expenses that we see here. And I think there are some that may even go beyond sort of the St. Louis Economic Partnership that are worth evaluating. The other thing is, where we do have opportunities for some direct earned revenue, those are really important. I think the new market tax credit is a really great example of a program that, drives real fee revenue to us that we can have a lot of certainty in when we get allocation and have been successful in getting allocation in the past. But don't want to over rely on those, because even that, could be, is not 100% certain year in and year out. So, just really offering a reflection of the reality of what it means to budget for SLDC. And, being an independent agency, we still require a lot on partnerships and requests and, uncertain programs and, programs rolling off and programs ramping back up that make this, a pretty significant challenge. But hats off, I feel confident in this budget based on my conversations with Charlie and Chris as we've developed this, and just wanted to offer those reflections.
Is there any further discussion, or are there any other questions? All right, seeing none, may we get a roll call?
All right, Director Arnold,
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Aye. Director Gilbert,
Aye.
Director Koenig,
Aye.
Director McBride.
Aye.
Alderwoman Sonia,
Aye.
Director Spencer,
Aye.
Director Young,
Aye.
and Chair Milburn.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you for that. On to agenda item number 6, resolution number 26 SLDC 1083, authorizing execution of an agreement with Headcount Inc. for labor compliance services. Is there a motion and a second?
So move. I second.
All right, having heard a motion and a second, Stephanie, it looks like you're on deck again.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me back, this time to request your authorization to execute a short-term labor compliance services agreement in support of our MBE and WBE compliance efforts in an amount not to exceed $20,000. Before I launch into the request, I just wanted to share some updates about the status of the MBE compliance program. We'll talk a little bit about certification later this morning, which is really focused on addressing contractor availability. But on the compliance side, I wanted to just refresh us all on how SLDC has been working with the Board of Aldermen, the Mayor's Office, and other key stakeholders to provide clarity and consistency in the MBE engagement process. So, for example, SLDC hired Griffin and Strong in August of 25 to review the city's participation policies and the disparity study. We talked about that a little bit in the budget. That engagement contributed to some of the program updates and guidance we saw released last year. The work with Griffin and Strong continues, and funding for this effort, again, is going to extend into the next fiscal year. Also, the MBE compliance team continues to actively monitor MWBE participation on several city and incentivized development projects to ensure that there is still compliance with the applicable redevelopment agreements. And in recognizing that transparency will continue to be important as we work through this transition, we're reminding all of our developer partners that a non-exhaustive list of factors relating to good faith efforts is publicly available and articulated in the program guidance. Finally, SLDC, the Board of Aldermen, and our stakeholders will continue meeting to reevaluate compliance goals, existing disparity data, and the new disparity study results with the goal of adopting new MBE ordinances. So we hope to see that legislation passed again in the next coming months. So all of that just serves as a background for this request to authorize the execution of an agreement with the headcount to provide short-term labor compliance services for MBE and WBE compliance. You may recall from prior meetings that the headcount also provides the web-based platform that our team uses for prevailing wage and workforce utilization monitoring. In March, the SLDC board approved a 1-year, $55,000 extension of our contract with the headcount while the city reviews the legislation. So during that same review period, we would like to be able to hire the headcount to help increase our short-term capacity to perform labor compliance reviews and enforce the prevailing wage obligations. This agreement, again, amount not to exceed $20,000, would provide one full-time labor compliance clerk for about 4 months to review certified payroll records, ensure correct employee classification and wage rates, and address some of the broader development industry feedback we've received about processing times for payroll and prevailing wage measurement. So because of the uncertainty regarding the future compliance directives, our staff again is asking that this be a sole source engagement with the headcount to ensure continuity of service for our existing requirements. This request would waive the sole source monetary cap for this procurement and would be funded by SLDC agency funds. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them at this time.
Ms. Reese, I just want to mention, I want to ask you, thank you for always bringing us up to date on this work that's being done. Knowing that this is very important and at the forefront of many of us here, but we also get a lot of the comments outside of here and outside of this work. So what you're saying and what I'm hearing, I want to make sure is that this clerk that you all will be hiring, if this is approved, will be addressing the challenges that we've been sharing with you with the work that Headcount has been doing. And as a follow-up, is this clerk someone that's already in-house that's working with us, or is this someone coming from Headcount? Or where can we depend on that to make sure that the relationship is fair and transparent with labor on our labor side as well?
Yeah, so the clerk would be provided by the head count. So it would be someone who is familiar with their system and familiar with our data, but on the head count side. So we did, despite all of the different thoughts and feelings about the head count, we thought for continuity, it would be helpful to have someone from that organization help. And then the real focus here again is to address some of the processing times and again, review backlog for the prevailing wage and other payroll data that is shared. That is a bit of feedback that we receive quite often, that there's a lot of time and labor put into entering all of the data. I'm air typing here on my computer, but there's a lot of time put into that effort, and we don't always have enough time to process and give feedback on it. So that is what this is intended to do, is really help get that information current so that we can review it and react to it and include it in other tools that we're doing as we're going through this process. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. I think I heard one other question coming in at the same time.
So I just have one question. So the short-term full-time employee will they be working on backlog, and then this work after the 4 months or so the ongoing work will be assumed by the consulting company, or?
Yeah, so it is a short-term catch-up of 4 months, and then we will reevaluate how to continue managing backlog at that point. So we can either continue the agreement with them or hire, we're talking about, do we hire people? We want to be flexible and not overcommit in any direction or the other. But the again, real immediate bit of feedback we've received has had to do with processing time and accuracy of the data. So we want to bring in some additional short-term support for that.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yes. Thank you for all of your work on this. My question is in regards to the backlog. Could you give us an update on where the backlog is, and also help us to understand the picture of, with this short-term project, what is the expected outcome in the next few months? What do we think, I guess, what is the expectation for headcount to deliver on as far as getting us more caught up on that backlog?
Yeah, so there are a few things happening at the same time, and I know James, I think you're in the room, so I know you have additional context on this as well. I think there are a few things happening at the same time. We are having like frequent project meetings where the status of the project is discussed. And because we're not always able to be completely current on the status of, the different things that are entered, those conversations are not as fruitful, I think, as we might want them to be. So that's one piece of it. I think it's also, again, a very highly manual process for the kind of parties at every stage to go in and type all of this stuff in. So we, for relationship management purposes, want to be able to process and analyze the information that's shared in as close to real time as possible. So this role would help us get caught up there. And then we also have had just a couple of big projects where we've had to kind of restart with the data entry. And so just to be able to support the re-entry of information through this function, again, would, I think, be very helpful for relationship management purposes and just long-term usefulness of the data that everyone is working so hard to put into the system. So I do not have any hard backlog numbers like I do on the certification side. I'm kind of newer to the data analytics part of this function, but I can bring some more of that to the meeting next month if you would like.
Yes, what I can say is I think because of all the troubles with this program, there's a lot of low trust on the
Yeah.
labor end, and because of I know for a fact I'm going to have some conversations and I'm going to be asked, is there even a purpose to this if things are being activated without compliance being there? So I think, it's really important while we're trying to rebuild the trust and show that we're trying to address the issues in the program, that there are tangibles and specific numbers that we can provide to our external partners to say, this is the status of the program. These are, and I understand some of these things really vary on a per project basis, but whatever information and data that we can get to provide them solidly that says, we're aware that this is what's in the clog. We're aware that this is, the active wait time that you have right now. And then these are the tangible numbers of what we can, where we're aiming to go. I think that's really important because I can say, like, I know that I'm going to hear a lot of questions and a lot of skepticism about this, and not having any hard data and numbers doesn't really help me, especially
Yeah.
when there's been some things, when there's been some issues and some challenges and some disagreements on how things have been handled thus far. So having this conversation and moving additional money to it, I think is great. I think we should continue to clean it up. But I do think giving some data, giving some numbers, and really being able to say what we can expect to be held to with these
Yeah.
funds being moved is really an important part of this conversation.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm happy to pull some information together about that for the next meeting. I'll also share that like both James and I have been out kind of in industry trying to get a sense for where the real pain points are and also what a reasonable solution can look like that both manages the the effectiveness of the program overall without creating additional layers of risk or creating additional layers of just like unnecessary hoops. How can we get the information we need in the most kind of accurate and effective way possible? And so we've talked through a few different paths and have some ideas that we're working through, and hopefully we'll be able to bring some of that back to you all next month.
Thank you. I think that will be really helpful. And I think reasonable is important because my concern is twofold. I think when people see us making moves and making progress, they will just paint their own expectations if we don't paint them for them. So one,
Yeah.
I want there to be something that we can be held accountable to. But also, I don't want people to think that we're going to move this contract, get
That's
this
right.
money moved, and then all the issues are going to be solved. So that's why I think that the data and the numbers and tangible outcomes are important so that we've already set the expectations and level set and have been clear on what we can and can't do and where we're trying to go.
Yep, love that. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you for your consideration. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. All right, can we get a roll call, please?
Sure. Director Arnold.
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Aye. Director Gilbert.
Aye.
Director Koenig.
Aye.
Director McBride.
Aye.
Alderwoman Songe.
Aye.
Director Spencer.
Aye.
Director Young.
Aye.
And Chair Milburn.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you for that. On to agenda item number 7, Director's Report. Over to you, Director Westbrooks.
Right, thank you. So for my director's report today, what I'd like to do is share a strategic framework, I think, that seeks to marry kind of a high level overview of the landscape of development in the city and tying that to an operational direction for SLDC. So what this is not is a strategic plan. Okay, so that's not what this is. This is more of a guiding document that's guiding early stage executive leadership team formation and how I'm thinking about the work and connecting the work of the agency to the reality that we're seeing here in the city. So, I think it goes without saying that we have very strong underlying assets in the city. We have committed leadership in the city, strong institutional anchors. There's capital here in the city. It may not always be coordinated, but it's here. But development outcomes remain very inconsistent and sluggish and very challenged. And so to dive a little bit more deeply into that, you can just go to the next, or I can. Is that in parts of the city, there are where markets don't exist, there's an opportunity for SLDC to help create those markets. And excuse me, can you go back one? I think we may be missing. Thank you. So in some areas of the city, obviously, there are places where markets don't exist. And I think that's best seen by the fact that we have over 24,000 vacant parcels in the city. LRA owns about 9,000 or 10,000 of those vacant parcels. And the idea here is if we're not extremely intentional in addressing that there's no reason why this won't be 30,000 vacant parcels or 40,000 vacant parcels over time. There are other areas of the city, like think downtown, where markets are very slow. I think that's highlighted by a 26% vacancy in these office buildings directly behind us, which are symptomatic of a very slow market and one that's quite frankly in decline as well. And then overall, as we've kind of addressed here and there, and the feedback that I've gotten very loud and clear, and we're all aware that the system in general, despite some of these challenging markets, is just extremely hard to navigate. And so in response to that, SLDC's work will be to work flexibly and to do interventions that match specific market conditions. And so at a high level, that means where markets don't exist, SLDC will work to create markets. Where markets are slow, SLDC will work to accelerate those markets. And where markets are working or seem to be working, we won't take that for granted, but we'll seek to support those markets or parts of the city as part of our work. And so looking at the sort of the concept of market creation, the sort of thinking is if SLDC assembles land, coordinates capital, and concentrates development in targeted areas, then private follow-on investment will emerge in places where it does not currently exist. And right now, there really isn't that leadership in development where you have an agency like an SLDC, and I think that's a firm role for us to be strategic about where we go and start to address some of these vacancies and say, these are parts of the city that are adjacent to nodes of strength. We have tools where we can start to assemble some of these parcels and signal to private investors and others that these are areas that we would like to develop with significant support, obviously, to start to address part of the vacancy challenge. I think what's baked into that approach is there's a huge need for public-private coordination of capital. And I think there's obvious, we sort of have fits and starts and ideas come along about ways that the private sector can partner with the city. But being more aggressive and doubling and tripling down on that and really strengthening that muscle, I think is absolutely critical to starting to address this vacancy crisis that we have. I think it's worth saying as well that these 24,000, it's a huge hole in the middle of the city that's not providing any economic value to the city whatsoever. And so all this unproductive land and abandoned land is actually not only a drag on the city, but it's the city's economy, but on the region's economy. And I think one thing that's been clear to me as We've dealt with issues on this vacant properties that it actually costs us money, right? And so it's a net, we're getting a negative return. You know, it's not that it's not contributing anything to the tax rolls, it's actually costing the city significant resources to try to maintain you know, these vacancies, and there's social implications, and you know, as well, sort of a ripple effect of you know, economic, you know, decline that comes from that. I'm not, anything I say today, we all know this, right? But I'm elevating it because I think it's important to name and be clear that that's going to be, you know, a priority, you know, for SLDC. And part of that creating markets is not to go and pick an island in the middle of nowhere, but to, you know, start to find places where we can actually build some density, you know, to be strategic and focused in the way we start to make those investments. The expected outcome from this work over time, because this is, you know, there's short-term activation that would need to happen in partnership, but, you know, this is really long game work that's going to take a lot of time to plant seeds, cultivate, you know, to where we can ultimately see visible scaled development, market formation in areas where there currently isn't any market, and significant reductions in unproductive and vacant land over time. You can go to the next slide. This next slide, I think, has gotten, per Casey's comments, has gotten a lot more exciting in the last few days. You know, where markets are, you know, their markets exist but are slow. I think downtown is kind of the archetype for a market that there is a market, but it's slow and declining. So the idea here is that if SLDC reduces development friction, increases predictability, and focuses investment on key assets and along key corridors, and existing markets will absorb vacancy faster and attract additional private capital. I think the Modessa bill, the MIS credit, the historic tax credit that was restored are really incredible opportunities. And I think, you know, that is, SLDC is going to play an integral role in making sure that those opportunities are maximized. Developers that are going to be taking advantage of Modessa, developers that are going to be taking advantage of MIS have to have an easy way to go when they're seeking approvals that are required to activate some of those incentives. And there's a real role, and I believe with the MIS credit, for example, there's a pretty short window to get to approval on some of the activation of some of those incentives. And so it's really incumbent upon SLDC to be ready for that, and to help ensure that we maximize the outcomes that can be derived from the opportunities that we got with the passage of those bills. And so, you know, the idea there is that if we are being intentional about accelerating markets, we'll have faster absorption on existing vacancy, decreased new vacancies, and be able to more rapidly respond to adverse events. I saw in the Business Journal a couple of weeks ago that the Westin went into receivership, and I think there's an opportunity for us to be, you know, way out in front of things like that, as opposed to reading about them in the paper. You can go to the next slide. Supporting market. Okay, maybe the previous slide. Yep. So this is really the idea here is supporting markets where markets seem to be functioning, but I don't think we can take that for granted. I think the top line here is if SLDC expands access to capital tools, strengthens the developer ecosystem, and reinforces small business support, then functioning markets will become more resilient and inclusive and sustainable. And I think, you know, when you look at parts of South City where we do have population density, we have functioning real estate markets, we have commercial corridors that have, you know, pretty strong business activity, relatively speaking, we shouldn't take that for granted. And that there's a real opportunity to lean in and continue to foster the organizations that are doing really important work there around housing development. Somebody mentioned sort of the 2s and 4s, infill housing. You know, there's a lot of nonprofit developers that are really, you know, holding down the fort in that part of the city. And I think, you know, one of the things that's not lost on me is that population and those families that live there, you know, not taking that for granted, that if we don't continue to invest and activate that some of those families may decide to start to leave. And so I think it's incumbent upon us when we're thinking about our work that I don't think we have the luxury to just focus on one thing over the other. We've got to figure out a way to be strategic and focus on sort of the broader picture, which doesn't mean we do everything everywhere. It just means that we're being strategic and focused in the ways that I'm describing. And I think that if you know, on this dimension, that we can cultivate broader development participation in the city with smaller developers who are doing important infill work, and create stronger, more durable, more resilient neighborhoods and market activity along some of those commercial corridors that already you know, seem to be working pretty well. And we can go to the next slide. And so kind of looking at that landscape and thinking about the work of SLDC, you know, where I've arrived is that there are a few core competencies. The work of SLDC is very complex. There's a lot of incoming. There's a lot of tactical work that we have to do. But broadly speaking, you know, the larger ways that I envision us organizing our work is by ensuring at the top, you know, a really good developer experience. And that goes to, again, maximizing the opportunities that we have, not only with the passage of some of the state legislation, but when you think about the developers who are trying to do infill housing, or you think about, you know, developers that are trying to, you know, small businesses even that are trying to plant their flag in a commercial corridor, making sure that they're having a good experience with SLDC and that we're helping to facilitate good development, because if we don't facilitate good development, we will end up with either no development or bad development. Deal execution, you know, you mentioned, Sean, that, you know, when we look at the budget, you know, the pipeline is a little soft. And I think there's a real opportunity for SLDC over time to be more proactive in cultivating a pipeline of potential development opportunities. And, you know, not all pipeline is qualified pipeline. So being clear with ourselves what a qualified pipeline looks like, so that we have a clear line of sight on the development activity in the city and how we can best facilitate moving that to along so that the developments actually happen in execution. I already mentioned the land assembly piece. I just think that there's, you know, that an intervention there is extremely necessary. Again, we don't want to be in a world next year where we have 30,000 vacancies and 35,000 vacancies. And there's a clear opportunity there to start to cultivate strategic development on some of the vacant land that we have. And really, if I you know, want to be a little more specific, you know, you look up and around NGA, you look along Cass Avenue, you look along Dr. Martin Luther King Boulevard, you look just north of there, lots of vacant LRA land that creates lots of opportunity for us to be strategic and focused, to start to create some density in some areas where those markets are struggling. Tornado notwithstanding, you know, some of these challenges are obviously, you know, decades of disinvestment that was accelerated by the tornado, that it's incumbent upon us to create a scaled response. Capital coordination, I've mentioned this briefly with, you know, public-private partnership. You know, I came from the CDFI industry, and, you know, thinking about the role of philanthropy, we have a growing philanthropic environment in terms of the ways that philanthropy is looking to support community and economic development in the city. That's a new, relatively new thing, I think, for the city of St. Louis. Not to say there hasn't been a lot of philanthropy, but just in my work in community development finance, I'm seeing really positive signs. You know, we have 8 or 9 really strong CDFIs in the city. We have actually probably the highest number of traditional bank branches than most cities across the country. So there's a huge traditional bank system present here in the city. And you have private capital corporations that are looking for ways, looking for on-ramps to get involved to help support the future of the city of St. Louis. And there's no one really playing that capital coordination role. And I think that's an opportunity for SLDC to step up and play that capital coordination role, to make sure the capital is going where it needs to go to support land assembly, corridor, you know, commercial corridor activation, et cetera. And then finally, you know, one of the focuses, if we're looking at the high level bucket, is developing a strong operational backbone. And I think that, you know, continuing to develop an agency that has the capacity to not only confront the significant challenges that we have in the city, but to confront the significant opportunities that we have in the city. And I think that's an ongoing work in progress. You know, SLDC has a strong foundation, but as we're pivoting out of sort of ARPA deployment, you know, there's a real opportunity to take a strong look at the operation. How are we best leveraging technology? How are we best using our time? Are we using it in a strategic, focused way to advance, you know, the priorities, you know, the development priorities that are obvious, you know, when you look across the landscape in the city. And so I liked what Charlie said. I'll put a period sort of on that sort of high level thinking, but I want to say that that is obviously, you know, work that is ongoing. I'm going to jump down, and as I think about early stage executive leadership team, early forming, that is my thinking as I'm forming my executive leadership team and starting to really define clear accountability and channels of work, strategies that we can implement around those 5 or 6 core competencies is going to be the focus of the leadership team as it continues to form over the coming couple of months. But aside from that, and having the opportunity to be more proactive and strategic, we have the reality of ARPA deployment. We 100% want to not send a single dime back to the state. Our team is incredibly focused on that. I feel really confident where we are, and there's positive developments with that every single day that are extremely encouraging. So, but that's going to continue to be a focus of ours, obviously, until September 30. LRA demolitions, we talked a little bit about that. That's been a hot topic. Some of those dollars are tied to state ARPA money, and we don't intend to send state ARPA money back either. And so that is going to continue to be a focus of ours in the near term. We heard about the budget. That has been a place where we spend, you know, considerable time and thinking about, you know, the next year and can we afford to do the next year? So I feel good that we can afford to do the next year, but that was a focus of ours. And again, as I've sort of brought to the top, you know, executive leadership team, early forming is just a key thing that I'm focused on right now to make sure we have all the roles covered that we need to have covered to advance, you know, the strategy. And so that's it. I think that's it for my slides, and happy to answer any questions. Oh, there actually is one more. So, you know, you measure what matters. And as we continue to put meat on the bones of this strategic thinking, I think having data and backing it up to help hold us accountable, make sure we're measuring the right things. And Sean's taking a picture, but these are not necessarily going to be our KPIs, but these are the types of things when we think about corridor activation, when we think about coordinating capital and investment, when we think about developer and business growth in the city and land assembly and activation. These are the types of KPIs, and I'm looking forward to an opportunity to come back with sort of a refined set of KPIs so that I can share with you all how we're going to be holding ourselves accountable, but wanted to give you a sense for the types of things that I'm thinking about here, 7 weeks into the book. I think that's it for me, so happy to answer any questions.
I was taking a picture so I could use it at my board meeting. The one point that really resonates with me, and you said it multiple times, is just the coordination, because there are so many good people doing a lot of great work, but we're not doing it necessarily together. So like the St. Louis public schools, where are their investments? The utilities, is Ameren ready to go where we want to develop? Is MSD ready? Are we prepared to bring all those people to the table? So development can be successful, and not just for a few years, but long term, and we can grow off that success. So looking forward to seeing how that happens.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And the thing is we do that in an ad hoc way, sort of project by project or need by need. How do we systematize that in a way that we have that sort of systematic coordination?
Well, we've got 6 plan areas around NGA, and they're all separate, but nobody's really talking about how you cross the borders and how we're looking at it holistically. So look forward to seeing where you take it.
I wanted to really say thank you and just again uplift the great work that you've done since diving in, really and truly diving in, Director. I know you and the mayor have had some good conversation starting your first day about, what does the 30, 60, 90, 1 year, 3 year plan look like? And there's been just relentless follow through and intentionality driving that. So I want to say thank you for centering that and coming in with both the desire to make a plan, but make sure it's informed by a lot of the experts that are over at SLDC as you do that. When you look at the slides that you just presented, and when you look at the priorities, what are some of the low-hanging fruit items that, as you're assessing the landscape, that you think that, within the next, several months, that there could be meaningful progress on?
To be perfectly honest with you, I think some of the obvious low-hanging fruit is our responsiveness. I mean, there's real-time tenants who are calling us and saying, we're gonna leave downtown if you don't do something. And we haven't heard from anybody in 9 months. And to show up and take the meeting and have follow through to show that we're, serious, when we get calls about LRA, our responsiveness, just taking any incoming as seriously as possible, coordinating, an appropriate response to make sure that, folks are at least hearing from us, I think is really, because, a lot of this is, when I even think about the vacancy and sort of the LRA and, when we have challenges around encampments, we may get sort of a call, but that is a larger coordinated response. But being able to mobilize, the right city departments in partnership with Shelton and LRA under his leadership, to have a response to, the citizens who may be directly impacted by that encampment, I see that as early stage low hanging fruit, in terms of, and I know that may seem a little soft, but I just think making sure that people feel responded to when they raise their hand to say, hey, we're struggling with this. I met with a demo company that, that pulled me aside at a construction luncheon I was at a couple of weeks ago. And they had questions about the city's bid process because, depending on the city agency, if it goes through STL permits, or it goes through St. Louis Public Schools, or it goes through LRA, or it goes through SLDC, it's different. And so they don't really know what to expect. And so, I took that as an opportunity. I'm not patting myself on the back, but, truly, I just took it as an opportunity just to sit and listen to them and to better understand what they were trying to say. And they said that, this is the first time that they've ever had the opportunity to really sit down and talk through. And I think that, if that's like hitting singles and doubles, I haven't said that since like the first day, but, I think that starts to add up over time. That responsiveness, people start to build their trust back, that someone's listening to them and taking what they say seriously. And we want to be an agency that does that.
Great, thank you. And my follow-up question is, when you look at our development landscape, our economic development landscape, everything that's attendant with that, obviously, there's challenges. What is it that excites you as you were building out your plan? What is it that you looked at and thought, yeah, this is really cool?
Yeah, I think that the public-private partnership is just a huge need. We've got to activate private capital in conjunction with some of these public resources that are coming online. And I can't wait to go and start making requests and sharing, more in depth about the needs that we have, because I think there's a real appetite. People are looking for ways to support the future of the city of St. Louis and creating a vehicle. We have everything we need, and we're actively doing that right now to create a vehicle to be that on-ramp that the private sector can really lean in a strategic way to support, a lot of the elements of what I described today. And so, I come from the CDFI industry where it was all capital all the time. That capital coordination piece and service to a strategy, and in service to advancing the development in the city of St. Louis, I think is one of the aspects of the work that is particularly exciting to me.
Great, thank you. Well, I appreciate all of that, echo all of that, certainly, and sharing all that. And thank you again for your leadership, for diving right on in with a tremendous amount of effort and intentionality.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions or discussion?
Yeah, I just also want to echo the gratitude for the work that you've been doing. I'm sorry I've been missing in some of the stuff here lately, but I don't take it for granted. What you just said is one of the values I think that you really bring to the table, because watching that public-private partnership play out has been the game changer for so many things. Just in the 8 years that I've been here, the things that I've seen get done have not been done by the government. They have been done by these partnerships that you talk about, with the government playing a role and then doing their part and doing what they say they're gonna do. And so the friction that you talk about, all of that, I want to make sure you know, that you have my full support in not just this position, but any position. And I also want to ask that I know it was missing in here and it wasn't a big, it probably wasn't even called for in this report, but in our next meeting, if you could give us a report on what your role, you believe your role could be and how we could support your role as LDC in the tornado recovery efforts, just like, kind of like a year in the response follow-up. I love what you said about listening to people, not just the contractors, but the constituents, because this is what we hear, right? And so I very much value my relationship with Director Shelton and his staff and Mr. Director Wilson. And I'm sorry, maybe not giving them the right titles, but I know for me on the day-to-day quality of life of constituents, it makes a difference. And it makes a difference on how we can build back the trust that you talk about for SLDC and what you all can do. You all absolutely, like Director Spencer said, are the development arm, right? So we need to be putting that trust in you. So I want you to be honest with that, right? And if you can't be honest here, I want you to be honest with me. I'm putting this out in public. If there's something that needs to change in their relationship so that we can be successful in this, so that not only you, but we can be successful in this, please let us know now, early enough on, where we can try to get ahead of it, course correct, and get some stuff done. Because if not, like you said, we don't want to be looking these years, touch points down the road, and we're still struggling and saying some of these same numbers and these data points. So again, I just wanted to publicly thank you, but also publicly offer my support as we continue this work ahead.
And I second that. But that means a lot. This is hard work. It's been great. It is intense. And so I really appreciate the support. Thank you. Yeah.
I just have one comment, and this is just a little more specific about the vacant parcels. It's a big number. It's a number we talk about, not wanting to grow, but probably, expecting to grow. We do need it to slow. But I think it's important to understand that there are a lot of different types of vacant parcels that have different challenges. And it was important when you say these many are LRA and these are not. But there's also other things that how many of the vacant are tornado, driven, and how many are not, how many, are north side and how many are not, how many have been demoed and are ready for development, and how many are still standing. I mean, that's a lot of different types of vacant properties in a pipeline that probably need very different approaches. So I think there's a complexity there that probably needs to be recognized.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, thank you. And I couldn't agree more. Yeah, and so luckily there's been a lot of work done by current SLDC staff. A lot of work was obviously done in assembly land for NGA. There's experts like Legal Services of Eastern Missouri that, beyond even like what you look and see, there's complexity and ownership structure.
Yeah.
And, so all over the place in terms of like looking at vacant land. So I appreciate that call in. And, I feel confident that, we have the subject matter experts who have lived experience in developing in a material way some of the vacancies that we have, and then we have partners that are, laser focused on the issue from some of the complexity that you don't see when you drive around. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All right. Any other comments, questions, or discussion about the director's wonderful report before we go to the certification report? All right. Well, then we will kick it over to Stephanie for the third time today. Stephanie, you're on deck.
And I'm going to make this one quick because y'all, my 8th grader gets out of middle school today. And so I would like to say congratulations to him. But you all have a copy of the Certify STL status report for this month in your file. My goal is to update this for you every month and send it in advance of every board meeting. I will use the same format. I will track the same metrics just to let you know how things are moving through the process. And then, as I noted in kind of the second half of the document, I'm tracking 3 KPIs in particular around this, all of which I believe drive kind of an improved business experience. One is increasing our processing around the no change renewals. As I've shared in the past, 85 to 90% of our portfolio is renewals for businesses who are just kind of doing the same thing year to year and want to keep their certification current. So I want to make sure that we're really addressing those and clearing out that system. Second most important is getting new businesses certified, right? For everybody who wants to engage an MBE or WBE and get that participation credit, we need to get these firms certified. So moving them through the process is critical. And then engagement, like Stephen mentioned a few minutes ago, responsiveness is critical. We've had a lot of positive response to picking up the phone, answering, answering an email, just engaging with folks, reconnecting with our colleagues at the Lambert Airport DBE certification program. We had, not really been in touch with them for over a year. Reestablishing connections with our colleagues at Bi-State, just really connecting with the certification and small business ecosphere here in the region. So that engagement prong is really important. And you'll just continue to see me report on the status of those items and flag any additional problems that come up. I do, again, think that getting our data clean so that we can routinize this work more going forward is also a priority. But I thought I'd stop there. Are there any questions or things that you would like to see refined in the report going forward? I'm hoping that this will serve multiple purposes, not just for you all, but we do have stakeholders in the county and in other, industry specific groups. And so I'm hoping that this resource can serve multiple audiences. Any questions?
Stephanie, are these numbers for new application processing time? Are they aspirational beginning June 30? Or are they gonna be?
They are aspirational, Matt. But you got to have something to go for. And I thought that this chart, the chart that I put in here on that second page, to the extent that you've got a color printout of it, I thought this was really interesting just to see how much variety there is between when someone submits their application, when we accept it to process it, and then how long it actually takes to process. A lot of that time, there's a lot of just sitting around time in the system. So I'm hoping that through the multiple layers of process enhancement that we're doing, each of those stages will tighten up, which will allow that whole kind of approval cycle to compress. But it is aspirational. But you know what? If you don't put a number out there,
Oh, I agree. Just trying to see where we're at. Thank you.
yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
And Stephanie, as somebody who's tracking a lot of this information and this program, thank you so much for all the work you've done to step up and take control of dealing with some of the problematic delays. This was the first time I've seen a report like this at this board level, and I just appreciate being able to have it in front of me. I know you're working every day to do things better, but it's obvious the renewals are already showing some progress, and you're biting off enough of what you can chew. And I know we've got a lot more work ahead of us, but thank you for your leadership around this topic.
Yeah, and thank you to you all and to Otis Williams in particular for just entrusting me with this effort. It's a lot, and there was a lot going on. I think when all this transition happened, and I'm grateful to you all for trusting me to steward this thing along.
I echo Director Spencer's gratitude as well. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yeah,
I do
I'll
not.
also echo that. Thank you. It's
Thank you, Casey.
there's been a lot of feedback that Mayor's Office has received so far, just noting and appreciating just some of these changes that are already underway. So want to acknowledge that and uplift that too.
Great. Thank you all. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you. Okay. And then we are on to our final portion of the director's report, long-term tornado rejuvenation. presentation by Mr. Russell Halliday. Go ahead and take it away.
Thank you very much. I'd like to begin with some of the past, since this is actually the first opportunity that we're going to kind of talk about tornado. In terms of getting, I think, my role is centered around project management. And early days, there was a need in setting up winter shelter and the hoteling process as part of protecting those that are impacted during those winter events. So that resulted in 738 short stay accommodation units and 645 long stay accommodation. These are hotels, working relationships. But we now have that database for the upcoming winter and they can be reworked. So that's in a database that's been handed to SLEs. The second thing that we were working on early was a bill grant. So the bill grant is it was a very technically orientated, transportation orientated grant application. We put that grant together, focused on MLK, and it's to connect east to west, North St. Louis. So that's an opportunity. We should hear about that in July, but that is for a design exercise. That process leads into the construction, which could be up to $25 million. So we like to leverage other funds if we possibly can. Thirdly, there was a pre-application process. I think part of what you had indicated is how do we do this? How do we make this easy for development? And one of the things early that we determined was, pre-application processes can be very powerful. You can set expectations early. You can set criteria. So we put together, as part of a collaborative effort across PDA, building safety and other departments, a memorandum that basically lays out that criteria. Now that process is in place. I think that's a step one to further development in terms of, to your point, making the process easier and a lot more transparent for development generally. So I think that's a beginning to a longer discussion later. There's also a number of SLDC or city-directed projects in the tornado area. Two particularly that I've spent a fair amount of time supporting across the team. One is the infill housing project that was won by Modular Building Systems. That contract now is in place. The design is underway. Meeting with the ultimate TIAS next week. So we should expect construction of that and of the first building, show home, if you like, available in North St. Louis by the end of September. Okay, so that is a beginning of a series of those products. They will be sold to individuals. It's the plan still, but that could change it as we go. 80% AFLA is the target. So the second is the Monarch in terms of the development there. It is really a key asset that was purchased some time ago by SLDC, L0 maybe. But the point is that is an anchor project that needs development, but also needs support within the tornado area. So working with the team at getting the product in place, and that has, I think, just gone for a permit application now. So my role, I'm not suggesting that I'm doing all of these. My role is to support the team. We've got a great team at SLDC. At times, we need to double down on what does time look like. So putting schedules together. What does the scope look like? Let's refine the scope and be clear about it, and also look at the expectations around cost. So those three things I focus on to support the team. I guess the next thing was the LDC loan, and I think Stephanie may have left, but part of the loan programs, how do we support? How do we create a level of support for small business, particularly? there was two surveys that currently were conducted. The first one, I think 3 days after the tornado, it looked at reaching the 780 roughly licensed businesses in the tornado area. And the survey created what I thought was quite a expected outcome insofar as that it determined things that were normally, requirements. We're out of power, the windows are blown out, I need support in those spaces. Did not quantify that, so that a second survey was conducted. It didn't receive a lot of feedback. We only got a little over 90 responses, but we asked specific things around the impact in terms of what are your needs. So looking at cost. And we did that deliberately to look at how to put a loan program together and working with LDC, but I think we make some changes on how we do that. So, but we're looking at those programs. I think funding is going to be fundamental, obviously. We need to understand where the money comes from, how do we engage with funding agencies and banks and philanthropy and, the community. And how do we see them as part of the solution? How do they also see themselves as part of the solution? So we need to be really strategic in that approach. So we're working that and having active discussions with banks and other different agencies for funding. And then I think the last thing I want to spend a bit of time is actually, if we go to the next slide, please. This is population density. Everyone, I think, probably is aware of what population looks like. A little misleading because this is actually based on census tracts. Obviously, the central corridor is a predominant area that we need to bring attention to. There is density in that corridor, east to west. Interestingly, noticing to the north, Delmar divide. To the north of that, it gets fairly lessly densified, if you like, and then the tornado area cuts right through that space from the park, obviously, out to the river. Next slide, please. This is a context. It's not a very good one. We're looking for true population by area rather than census tracts in order to quantify that. This map is depicting, what we know in terms of development. It's a snapshot of 74 developments that I'm tracking. And what I mean by that is often there are staff members at SLDC, CRA, that are looking and point people for individual developments. But I'm keeping an eye on the breadth of those. And I'm diving deep in terms of quantifying and qualifying specific developments with the team. The point, though, is to lay this on a plan, on a map, in terms of what does this mean in terms of the overall context? How does this help to inform what development should be? Where should density be? I think the second component is from the neighbourhood plan that has just been completed in December last year for Area 1, the Ville, Greater Ville, and Kingsway East. They have a great plan. And that is a plan that I think fundamentally we should be implementing. How do we help? That represents the MLK corridor, Kings Highway, and Natural Bridge as commercial corridors. That is their request. That is documented. How do we support that? How do we understand what development could be in those areas? Looking at laying that with the development that we know is in some all the way up to shovel ready. Some of these are already in construction. How do we overlay those two? We see a density around MLK. Go to the next slide, please. Then we overlay LRA properties. And LRA property, there is an interesting density increase north of MLK, as you indicated. And that density tells us that is an opportunity for development. That is controlled property that the SLDC has. That is how or one of the instruments, one of the levers that we can pull to promote development in that area. So next slide. No, there's the last. There should be one more. Okay, we're missing a slide. The second component, I guess the last component is looking at that and defining 17 different sub areas. So what we've looked at is defining the areas of available LRA property, grouping them in areas that we have on a map on the side here if we want to look at it later. But those areas designated number of lots and designated acreage. It is intentionally at this stage not looking at any private property, and it's not looking at anything that is outside of the LRA control, but looking at that as an instrument to promote development. What do we mean by that is the potential for remediating the ground, looking at utilities, as Sean indicated earlier. How do we work with the utilities? We have done this on the NGA project where we did a technical working group strategy. I think we could do something similar here, which brings everyone together, looks at long-term plans, and coordinates that in terms of delivery. Let's do this together, right? Is kind of the approach. And I think the other part of it is the different assets that are needed in this community, in every community. You're going to need those assets that the community needs, are retail and the things that people need, particularly food. This is a food desert. We've got a grocery store listed in here that we're trying to promote. All of these things need to be considered as part of development that runs in somewhat of a sequence. It's not necessarily going to all happen at once, but it needs to be done in a coordinated manner. Otherwise, you don't have the rooftops to support the commercial. And then the last piece is the education, schooling. How do you do schooling? How do we do? We'll work together. Let's do that, right? Let's actually collaborate. And that's the approach that we're taking at the moment. I know that I'm getting very broad here. There's a lot of detail to this, but I'll stop it. I'll put a period there. If there's any questions or comments.
Thank you for that overview. One question I have, given we are a year out, is if you had to capture the top 3 things that you want the people in this room to know that they can, talk about over, Memorial Day cookouts, or, with their colleagues that they're approached about, hey, how's, from, the development, perspective, how is the recovery effort going? What's happening right now and what's coming down the pipe? What are those 3 pieces that you want everyone in this room to know and everyone in this room to be able to speak to?
Okay, great question, firstly. I think I would say, if you're going to talk about this over a barbecue, I'd say there is optimism here. We have to lean forward, right? This is not a maybe. This has to happen. We need to support North St. Louis because it supports the city of St. Louis. And that supports the state of Missouri. Those are all connected. In my mind, if you were to say anything, this is us that needs to do this. It's the second thing. This is a collaborative effort. We all need to get involved. Part of my job is looking for how does it look to you in terms of how do you see yourself as part of the solution? I think the third thing is, and it's more of a comment. I know that it's been hard as the 12-month anniversary. This is not easy stuff. And the recovery team have done an excellent job. So, thank them. I'd leave it there.
Thank you for that. And then I think one follow-up question, for that is, as you're looking at the pipeline of projects, understanding that there's a lot more work to be done, a lot more predicates that have to happen before, some of those materialize. We're about halfway through the year. When you look at the art of what is possible for the second half of the year, what are those specific projects that feel, okay, this is going to be within the realm of the art of what's possible from your vantage point?
I think there
I look crazy.
Go ahead, Russell.
Someone, I get, the art of the possible, maybe it is the impossible at times, because looking at development, it's not a linear process. So understanding how do we actually get in behind some of this development work in a strategic way with the available tools. I think there are a couple of projects that stand out. One is, we name project? Your fits.
Yes, Davidson.
Okay. I think it's already public. Okay. But I think in terms of a grocery store on Natural Bridge, along with a senior living facility, I think those two projects are grouped together. I think those stand out as we got to get them over the line as fast as possible. I think there are developments along Delmar that are near term as well, residential based. I think those are possible. We need to support one at least one of those. And I think lastly, at scale, we're looking at large scale, but there's also those that operate the CDCs, the CDFIs that do great work, and we need to get behind them in the best way possible. They operate at all scales. So.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I'll just say, that is actually a pretty hard question to answer. And I think the system is not designed for projects to get across the finish line. And so we kind of have this conversation in another meeting about what is the pipeline of projects. And again, I've kind of mentioned it. What's the pipeline? What's the pipeline of qualified projects that are inside the 5-yard line of being able to actually close and be built? And that's a hard thing to get our hands around right now. And it double tapping on the coordination piece, we've got to get I think a lot more coordinated in terms of what that development pipeline is and what portion of that pipeline is actually qualified, meaning are real, don't have significant gaps. And if they do, they have, a dedicated plan or are able to attract additional, bank financing or other types of capital to support, getting across the finish line. And so I think that is both our near term and short and long-term work. And we're doing that where, we had a good meeting with funders a few weeks ago where we're sort of tactically trying to pair funders with specific projects to see what their capacity is, but what their interest is and playing matchmaker. But playing matchmaker is not a long-term strategy. It's that system coordination, that's a long-term strategy. But I appreciate the question and I appreciate how hard it is to answer.
Yeah.
Chair Milberg, I'd just like to add another barrier is the tax abatement and the threshold. We have to address that as a priority as soon as possible. I know everybody's talking about it, but going into an already tax abated area with a project over $400,000, it has to comply with SLDC. And I don't think SLDC really wants to have to do the compliance and the certification on projects that low. So that's another barrier for people to come outside of the neighborhood, inside the tornado zone, because that incentive is not worth going after right now.
Thank you for that. I see Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, you have had your hand raised. Go on ahead.
Yes, thank you. I was just gonna ask, thank you for this presentation, and I hate that I missed part of it in transit. Wanted to ask him if he would be open to giving that presentation at a HUD's meeting.
Absolutely. This is what I love to do because I think everyone needs to be involved. So I absolutely would be involved. Yep.
Great. Thank you for that. All right. Are there any other comments? Yeah, questions. Yeah.
Russell, as far as the residential aspect of the destruction in the tornado area, are we like, what's the percentage between rebuild and new build on the residential piece? Or do you have your arms around that at this point?
Yeah, I look certainly at the recovery dashboard for repair. The repair number does change a little bit, but I think, but there's also the demolition part. So I'm working with Laura on where. I think it's part of what I'm kind of focusing on, not necessarily the quantity on that side. In terms of the new build, I'm targeting 14,000 homes. So,
Okay.
yeah, and that's outside of the development that's happening. We're looking, just looking at, and I know that the development, this is the pipeline, if you like, and some, to your point, we need to be a lot closer on quantifying them or qualifying them, but 522 residential units and about 85 for sale homes. That's kind of the magnitude so far there.
And then just as a comment, I just want to flag that when a large natural disaster occurs, the way that this has been handled has been quite irregular, has been non-standard, that the city budget is not set up to accommodate a large-scale natural disaster. And we have not received the funding that every other city that has been hit by such a natural disaster has received in the last 50 years. So I just want to flag that everything you're saying is good, and we're doing the best we can with the hand that we have received, and that we are having to find creative ways to do things that should be a lot easier and would be easier in a different political landscape. So thank you, and I know it's tough we're having to find ways to deal with things that are new, that are outside of the scope of any municipality, of any city, of any state, quite frankly. And that we appreciate everything you're doing to look creatively, and that all the leaders are doing to look creatively at this very, very, very tough problem, tough issue.
Great. Any other comments, questions, discussion? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Halliday, for your efforts and your continued pushing on this massive and varied issue. And we're just all going to keep pushing together and working together, and appreciate your time and efforts and your willingness to present to the HUD's committee, as Alderman Clark Hubbard requested as well. On to agenda item number 8, executive session. I understand that we do not have need for agenda item number 8, just confirming again, David Meyer, that is the case.
That is correct.
Okay, well, we will dispense with agenda item number 8. Agenda item number 9, the next regular board meeting is scheduled for June 18th, 2026. Is there any discussion? Does anyone have any concerns or questions about that? All right, seeing none, agenda item number 10 is adjournment. Is there a motion and a second to adjourn this meeting at 10:06 a.m.?
So moved.
I second.
All right, roll call.
We don't have to do a roll call.
Oh, that's right, we don't. Thank you.
So we are
Sorry to add one more barrier for everyone. Yes, we will thank you all for your time and the great conversation today. Appreciate it. Everybody have a nice and safe weekend.
Thank you.